Hey, welcome back to the TeenProLifers podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the Supreme Court bombshell case with Louisiana, the racist history of Planned Parenthood, and who you should really vote for to get a good pro-life legislation in 2020. All right, I'm joined by William today. So, how's it going, William?
I'm doing quite well. How about you?
I'm doing really good. Been doing a lot reading up on these cases and whatnot, but yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Awesome.
It's
Where are we
been an
even starting? Huge month for us, for the pro-life movement.
Especially for TeenProLifers. Actually, today we just hit 3,000 followers on Instagram. So that's really good. And yeah, with regards to the pro-life movement this month, we've had an interesting month for sure, to say the least.
Definitely.
So, the bombshell case in the Supreme Court about abortion rights with Louisiana is actually a really big deal. And in case you aren't aware, the pro-life movement lost this case. They were voted out 5-4 with Chief Justice John Roberts, who cast the decisive vote, which is very interesting as he is a Republican. So what do you think about that?
Oh, well, I first of all, I think it's very sad because Justice Roberts, he's tries to remain a moderate candidate, so he's been on both sides for everything. You really can't tell what he's going to do with him. But it's very sad that this happened because this decision was actually about a law that it wasn't only like banning abortions, it was putting restrictions on them that would actually help women's health, whether you are pro-choice or pro-life. You can accept this. But for some reason, this is not being taken seriously as an actual pro-life law. It's been being taken as it's not being taken as a law to protect women's health when they're getting abortions. It's being taken as a pro-life, like extremely pro-life radical law, and I don't think that's honest to view it that way.
Yeah. So what this law is and what it does is it requires doctors performing abortions to have admitting privileges at hospitals like nearby in the area, which means that if someone gets hurt during an abortion, they can be taken into the hospital like immediately by the doctor, which is that's actually really good for the woman's health, just in case, because actually a lot of people are injured during abortions, and without this kind of admitting privileges, it could be really dangerous, and it just wouldn't be a good situation for the woman. However, if this law was passed, there would only be one doctor in all of Louisiana that was able to perform abortions. So that certainly would have helped, prevent a lot of abortions throughout Louisiana, and would have been a big victory for the pro-life movement. So it's a shame that we were voted out, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that the Supreme Court also, it's ruled like this before, unfortunately. But what was interesting was I was really happy that the two new judges appointed by the Trump administration, whatever you think of him, I was happy that they both voted pro-life on the case, because that's a big victory to us, even if you don't like Trump's policies. But yeah, it's also very interesting that abortion in Louisiana has been 2/3 black, and it's mostly for minority communities. 2/3 of the people that receive abortions in Louisiana are actually going to be black. So I think that also ties in with what with the stationing of abortion clinics in more minority neighborhoods, which is a seriously racist thing.
Yeah,
that stems all the way back into Planned Parenthood's history, actually.
It's a shame because they do target these minority neighborhoods because for example, in New York, I think a black baby is more likely to be aborted than it is to actually survive, which is, that's racism right there. I don't know what you'd consider racism if not that. Because if a child doesn't have the right to life, what does it have? And unfortunately, they don't even see these people as actual people. So, but yeah, Planned Parenthood definitely, their placement of their clinics in minority neighborhoods is a clear move that is actually, I would say, racist. So,
And we were going to talk about, so Black Lives Matter is a huge it's a huge movement going on right now. I'm not going to get into that because we're a pro-life organization. We are not a political one. So
yep.
I just wanted to say, though, that the people that could care the least about Black lives is Planned Parenthood, and that's why they've had so many facilities. It's supposed to be minority neighborhoods more than white neighborhoods statistically, and they've actually had a very racist history. If you want to get into that.
Yeah, sure. So Margaret Sanger is, the founder of Planned Parenthood, and she had a lot of racist quotes and, just a lot going against her that just does not look good, especially now more than ever when this kind of stuff is really coming to light. So yeah, she's cited as saying that eugenics is, the most adequate and thorough avenue in the solution of racial, political, and social problems. Um, so again, choosing who lives and who dies, which is just racist, especially the way that Planned Parenthood chooses to do that through their placement of their clinics. And it's interesting. Do you have any more quotes from her?
Yeah, she was very openly racist. She spoke at a
Yeah.
meeting of the KKK, supervised a program entitled the Negro Project, and this project was noted to a guy named Dr. C.J. Campbell in 1939. So Sanger wrote, "We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population." Sanger's motives were really fascist. She wanted to practice eugenics to create a more perfect race. She actually, there's evidence of her working with scientists in Nazi Germany to
Yeah.
help her get her eugenicist goals through. So it is this is like clearly she's very institutionally racist, and yet Planned Parenthood still adores her and gives out the Margaret Sanger Award every year.
Yeah. She actually praised Dr. Joseph Mengele, the Nazi doctor, and she said that like Germans' rights were safeguarded by him and whatnot in 1938, which is, I mean, especially looking back, you can just see in hindsight how racist that statement really is, because basically, um, yeah, that's just not a good thing to be said by anyone, let alone, the leader of and founder of one of the most openly pro-choice organizations in the world.
Yeah, for sure. And I just wanted to cite my statistics when I said that the minority communities are much more likely to have a Planned Parenthood than them. So according to the 2010 U.S. Census results, 79% of Planned Parenthood surgical abortion facilities are placed within walking distance of communities largely comprised of minority groups. So what they're doing is they are putting them in groups where minorities are more stationed, so that if there's a low-income family, which unfortunately tends to be black, which is a huge social problem that we need to fix.
Yeah.
But in a minority community, then if they got pregnant and they wouldn't have the resources, then Planned Parenthood would instead place them as close to walking distance as possible, just to kind of manipulate them in. Whereas you could also go to a pregnancy center, which are set up around the nation too. But they strategically place them there just to get more abortions, more money from abortions in communities that have more of a problem with unplanned pregnancies and lack of funding.
Yeah. And Margaret Sanger, she really just had an agenda that was trying to push eugenics through birth control and abortions. And a lot of times, again, that impacts African Americans and other minorities the most. So, and you can see from her racist quotes that she clearly wasn't hiding that. She's just tough, as you see people like Hillary Clinton who praise Margaret Sanger and look up to her. Actually, Hillary Clinton said that she was in awe of Margaret Sanger. So, I mean, take that as you will, but I certainly would not want to have my hero be someone who is openly racist and trying to push abortions on African Americans, calling them a disease and saying you have to eliminate the population. None of that is good.
Right. And then also, Planned Parenthood is actually the leading cause of death in Black communities. There have been over 15.5 million abortions performed on African Americans, which outnumber the deaths of AIDS, violent crimes, accidents, cancers, and heart disease combined.
Wow.
So if abortion had not been legalized, then the African American population would have experienced an increase of 36%. But abortion actually, it's more stationed around minority communities. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to push whatever they can get money from for people with low-income families and then manipulate them.
I mean, none of this is good, especially because you're manipulating children, minorities, people who are already in a situation that's tough enough as it is. And then you're just trying to really just get money out of them under the shroud of saying, oh, we're just giving you a choice, we're giving you a way out. And the fact is that abortion is not a way out because there's long-lasting pain that stays with you for your whole life. That's just a fact. I'll actually look up a statistic so that I can back that up. But I mean, we just know that abortion is generally not good for the women that take part in it, and it's not even easier than adoption in the long run.
Exactly. So. And I just want to go back to Sanger. She was actually her views and those of her peers contributed to compulsory sterilization laws in 30 U.S. states that resulted in more than 60,000 sterilizations of vulnerable people, including people she considered feeble-minded, idiots, and morons.
Wow. That's just tough, for sure. Yeah. Okay, so according to afterabortion.org, there is no evidence that abortion contributes to improved mental health, and it actually points to risks to mental health, and that can cause depression and other such serious mental trauma. Because the fact is, like it or not, you are ending a life, and 81% of women who get abortions are more likely to experience mental health problems. And 22 studies, there were 22 studies done, and all 22 of them found that higher rates of mental health problems are associated with abortion. Right, 34% of your risk of getting anxiety is 34% higher. Your risk of getting depression is 37% higher. Your risk of heavier alcohol use is 110% higher. Your risk of marijuana use is 230% higher. And your suicide risk is 155% higher. That's all 22 of these studies found that. So none of this is good for the woman. And obviously none of this is good for the baby. 59% of women have an increased risk for suicidal thoughts after abortion. 61% have an increased risk for mood disorders and social anxiety disorders. And other things like alcohol and other substance abuses just go off the charts.
Exactly. So when Planned Parenthood keeps talking about how they like abortion is like super important and needs to stay safe and legal. Then what they don't do is they don't offer any solutions of post-abortion counseling or anything like any protection for the woman to be transferred to a hospital. That's the pro-life movement. But every time we try to initiate some legislation like that, then for some reason they get very mad, and I just can't tell why.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, a woman being able to go to a hospital, retransferred to a hospital very quickly if an abortion goes wrong is only a good thing. So you're just seeing bipartisanship there and an agenda that's trying to be pushed by Planned Parenthood. Because the fact is, it's easier to perform abortions if the doctor doesn't need to get certified and get admitting privileges at a hospital. They don't care about the safety of the woman. They just care about getting as many abortions done as possible. And that's very bad.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Since we've talked about how the emotional effects of abortion, how abortion is more stationed in Black communities, and we've discussed a little bit about like how the history of Planned Parenthood has been institutionally racist, then I think it's time to get into who are the pro-life candidates coming up in this new election, in the primaries coming up. So, do you want to start? Let's just start with the presidential candidates.
A second. Let's just, sorry, I was chewing ice. So let's just take it in like 3, 2.
All right. So since the primaries are coming up, then we have some reviews of the candidates you're going to want to vote for the pro-life candidate. But I think we should start with the candidates for president.
Yeah. So I mean, at this point, the two candidates are Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I think that's pretty much how this election is going to play out. Biden will most likely get the nomination in
20.
So Biden will most likely get the Democrat nomination in August, and Trump is pretty much 100% getting the Republican nomination. So that's what it comes down to. And when it comes to their pro-life, pro-choice views, it's pretty cut and dry. Trump is very much on the pro-life side of things, and Biden is very much pro-choice. So do you want to talk about what Trump has done, and then I can talk about Biden?
Yeah, so in only 4 years in office, Trump calls himself very pro-life, and he has appointed 157 pro-life federal judges, 2 pro-life Supreme Court justices, signed a Congressional Review Act allowing states to fund Planned Parenthood Title X funds, stopped tax dollars funding abortions overseas in the Mexico City policies, defunded the pro-abortion UNFPA, a population control initiative founded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is also pro-abortion. He required health agencies to disclose whether plans would provide abortion, settlements, and a new rule regarding HHS mandates, allowing organizations like Little Sisters of the Poor to reject providing contraception and abortions, allowed states to defund Planned Parenthood of Medicaid funds, cut Planned Parenthood's tax funding by up to $60 million, canceled a huge contract for taxpayer-funded experimentation with body parts of aborted babies, allowed Texas to fund a health program that does not send funds to abortion businesses, took action against California for violating conscience protections, cut funding from the pro-abortion WHO, and became the first president ever to appear at a March for Life, as well as calling in from another one in the Rose Garden. And very recently, I just wanted to bring up, he did an interview with Raymond Arroyo, and he's it looks to me now like he originally was only he was pro-life, but not in cases of rape and incest, and that is for another show why those two are not an exception. But it's on an interview with Raymond Arroyo, he made it pretty clear that he was pro-life in any circumstance now.
Okay. So yeah, Trump obviously very pro-life, whether or not you agree with him politically or not. You know, he is the pro-life candidate if that's what you're voting on. So real quick, let me just talk about Biden, because Biden's actually been endorsed by Planned Parenthood, who said that, quote, We felt like we can't endure another 4 years of Trump. We have to do everything we can to get him out of office. And that's from the Planned Parenthood president, because in fact, they probably do know that Trump is doing really good things for the pro-life movement, and just bringing to light what they are doing and how negative that is for women and whatnot. But back to Biden. So yeah, Biden pledged his support for reproductive rights, and he just says, quote, "We will protect a woman's constitutional right to choose, and I am proud to stand with you in this fight," unquote. So yeah, he's being endorsed by Planned Parenthood. So that pretty much says it all. I mean, he's standing with abortion and just with what Planned Parenthood is trying to push right now, which is, again, what we just talked about in minority neighborhoods, that type of procedure. So it's very interesting to see, because where Trump is very pro-life, Biden is very pro-choice. So he is very much in favor of abortions. So not the ideal candidate at all if you're voting on the basis of pro-life or pro-choice. And that's where I think a lot of voters probably are. Like, maybe you don't like Trump. You don't like him as a person. You don't like his policies. But think about what he's done for the pro-life movement. And if you're not sure, we can link this article right in the description of the episode to what Trump has done, what his legacy is. So definitely check that out. And, if it were me voting, I would definitely vote for Trump, because it's just very important to protect a person's right to life at all costs, really. I mean, because that's the first right that we have, and we're all here as a result of that right. So, take that as you will, and consider that before you vote. It's important to protect a baby's right to live, that's being taken away from it every day by organizations like Planned Parenthood and the WHO and whatnot. So yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah, I just want to bring up that Biden it's very interesting transition, because Biden was he was in support of the Hyde Amendment, which was the federal budget rider that blocked the use of federal Medicaid funding to fund abortion care until he received a lot of severe backlash from pro-abortion news outlets, and he actually changed his position during this election under the advice of his administration. So now his stance is I'm personally pro-life and politically super pro-choice. The woman has the right to choose. So it's such a sudden and unprecedented change, and it's also one that's going to divide the Democratic Party, because some people, that are also voting off the basis of pro-life, pro-choice, except on the opposite side of the equation, they might think, oh, Biden's been like way too shaky on this. We can't vote for him, or Trump. We just can't vote. So it'll be really interesting to see how it turns out. He's also trying to, this goes along with the Black Lives Matter. He's trying to reduce more maternal mortality deaths in the African American population by following after the California Maternal Quality Care Collaborative, which actually, what they tried to do is provide more abortion access to everyone in pregnancy, rather than trying to reform minority communities or better access to pregnancy centers. And all it did reduce the number of mortality deaths for the woman, at least, but it actually raised the minority communities mortality deaths anyways. So it was a huge failure for the Black community, and I don't think that's something you should be modeling your national policy off of.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, if I can just say, Biden changing his mind at the advice of his team and his campaign group just really shows that he's very shaky, and he doesn't really have a firm stance on this. He's just doing what will get him elected. you know, the fact is Trump is going to help the pro-life movement long term if elected. He's just going to help it. There's no other way to put it, right? I mean, he's put justices on the Supreme Court that have voted pro-life, even up to this law that was, or this policy that was shot down today in Louisiana. You know, we still had justices like Brett Kavanaugh voting to have this upheld and have the policy pushed forward. So, you know, again, Trump is the pro-life candidate in this election. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, that's true. All right, and then I think we're gonna wrap things up here. So, things to take away from this episode are: number one, Planned Parenthood is and has been a racist organization.
Mm-hmm.
And then number two, Margaret Sanger was institutionally a racist eugenicist. And then three, Trump is going to be the pro-life candidate this November, whatever you think about him. So if you're judging off the basis of pro-life and pro-choice, then I would say a vote for Trump this November. So with that, thanks for coming, Aiden, and then we're going to see you next week.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.